ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Mentoring Monday. I am Dr. Jennifer Jones Morales, and I'm welcoming you to another episode of Mentoring Monday. Over the last few years, I've been interviewing authentic leaders in the region, namely from Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and Jamaica. What I'm trying to present to you are authentic leaders and mentors, and to also highlight how they are impacting their mentees to rise to becoming authentic leaders. I'm delighted today to have with me Mr. Anthony Watkins, who is no stranger to Trinidad and Tobago and the region. So welcome, Anthony, and later on we will be joined by his mentee, Mr. Don Lafoucard, who is also no stranger to the national arena. So before we get into the discussion, let me tell you a little bit about Anthony Watkins. Anthony Watkins is the CEO and principal consultant of Odyssey Consulting Limited, a premier human resource and organizational development consultancy in the Caribbean. He has been actively involved in public and private sector organizational transformation and development throughout the region since the early 1990s. After graduating from the University of Toronto with a Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology and Sociology, he worked in the fields of social pathology and correctional services in Canada, and later in education on returning to Trinidad. A founding and honorary life member of the Human Resource Management Association of Trinidad and Tobago, HRMAT, he is currently chairman of the Community Recovery Committee, and has served as a member of the Caribbean Leadership Project Delivery Team, the task force for the establishment of the National Statistical Institute of Trinidad and Tobago, and on numerous boards of directors. In 2020, Anthony was conferred an honorary doctorate of laws by the University of Trinidad and Tobago, and was awarded a Public Service Medal of Merit Gold in 2019. Renowned as a speaker and author, his many presentations at regional business conferences and articles feature leadership, change, and transformation. His involvement in sport includes work with administrators, coaches, and players on national and regional teams in the areas of management and the psychology of performance. With over 30 years organizational development consulting experience, his areas of expertise include organizational diagnosis, developing organizational culture, visioning and strategy formulation, assessment center design and execution, strengthening teams, and emotional intelligence, to name a few. Welcome, Anthony. And I really am looking forward to this discussion today.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
So, Anthony, the intention is, as I said, to talk to authentic leaders and to highlight your journey to authentic leadership, particularly in the area of mentorship, and also later on to talk a little bit about how you have become a mentor and what your mentees are doing. And you know, we have Mr. Lafoucard here who will talk to us and join us in discussion a little later.
Of course.
So, Anthony, as early as you could remember, do you recall your first interaction with a mentor? In school, some people have remembered as early as primary school. Some have gone further down to Montessori. But could you recall or recap your first mentor-mentee relationship, and what was it like?
Yes, you know, it's interesting that you would ask that, because I do recall in primary school there was a particular teacher, and I guess to me as a 7, 8-year-old, he was a big man. But I realize now that he might have been maybe in his late teens or maybe just early 20s. And he was somebody, and his name was Edgar Lynch, and he taught at Arima Boys Government School. And I used to be talking about Edgar all the time. And one day my mother asked, "Well, why are you always talking about Edgar? What is it about Edgar?" I said, "Well, he has a muff and he could run fast." You know, and that was really, in a sense, typical. It was something that attracted me to him. Of course, back in the 50s, having a muff was a big thing. I went through my time of having one. I can't have it now. All right? But there was something about him that appealed to me. He was sharp. He was thoughtful. he was real. He was in a lot of ways what I would have wanted to be, particularly from an athletic perspective, because he was really a good athlete. And we had a number of conversations. In fact, you know, I remember I called him about 3 or 4 months ago.
Okay.
All right, just to touch base with him. And we talked about him often could run fast and some of the other things that had happened. I mean, I lost touch with him over the years, but when I came back to Trinidad, I knew he was still in education, and I did reconnect with him, and we did have some very useful conversations.
Okay, so thanks for that. But cast your mind back to being in primary school with Edgar.
Yes.
You know, how often was your interaction? Was he mentoring a lot of other boys as well, or was it a question of you felt that connection and he had his one-on-one discussions
I
with you?
felt the connection, and I think one of the things that happened is that my father used to teach in the school.
Oh, okay.
And my father would have taught him. Okay. So my brother and I were known quantities in the school, and there was often a kind of, even when my father was not there because he had left teaching in 1954, that there was a kind of almost a presence that they would have for for us. My brother and I experienced it in my own way, and a presence that he had there in our lives. So it was just, that he was there, and he was just this comfortable person to be around. I had no concept at the time of anything like mentor and mentee. Yes. I mean, that just, it was just this person who you could talk to. He would give jokes. He would, pull you up now and then, say a couple of things to you. But it was just that presence that I found wholesome and comforting.
Was there any particular message in your discussions with him that he passed on to you?
No, I think
it was just the ease of
it was the ease and in a sense doing what you wanted to do and enjoying it and doing it to the best. It was that kind of thing. So he looked good, he ran well, and his thing was, if you're going to do this thing, do it well. So
was he telling you, giving you techniques like how to run better?
No, not so much from a technical place, but just sort of those kinds of conversations.
Be the best at what you want to be.
Sure.
Okay, great. And was there any other mentor, or what we call mentors now?
Yes.
Was there any other relationship like that you had in primary school?
No, not in primary school. I mean, again, as I say, Arima was small. Everybody knew everybody then.
Yes.
So a lot of the guys, and given what my parents were doing, they were both teachers in the community. There were always people sort of who were there for you and sort of looked after you. But nothing. I mean, Edgar stood out for me in terms of those years.
Okay. Yeah. So let's move on to secondary school and tell us a little bit about your entry into secondary school at St. Mary's, and whether or not you met anybody with whom you connected in secondary school.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, living in Arima, I mean, remember this is late 1950s. And so the issue of jumping in a taxi and going back and forth every day just didn't happen. My brother is about 3.5 years older than I, and he went to St. Mary's. So in a lot of ways, he used, what the arrangement was that he would go down to Port of Spain on a Sunday evening or early Monday morning, but would spend the week by an aunt, and family, and then come back up on Friday evenings. So he was, in a sense, older than I was and not very present. And when I started to go to St. Mary's in 1960, well, of course, it was two of us now. Two of us couldn't go and stay at family, so we started to travel. Okay. And we did the traveling thing for a few months until I ran into what was a quite moving and, in retrospect, a traumatic experience, because my parents separated in June of 1960, and it was quite sudden. I knew they were having their difficulties, as many couples do. But, there was this one day at school, my brother said to me, listen, Mom says, don't come up with the guy who used to bring us up, from school every day. Come to this address in Sawo. So I went to the address in Sawo, my brother and I walked in, and I said, but look at this chair just like ours, and this table looking just like ours. Okay. And my mother promptly said, well, yes, it is ours. We're living here now. I just left your father.
Wow.
So at 6:30 on a morning, I was living in Arima, a place where I was born and grew up, where I knew everybody and everybody knew me, and that was my world. And then by 4:30 in the afternoon of that day, I was living in Sao, a place I had never been to, and where I knew no one.
Yes.
So it was a pretty disruptive experience. But, you know, even in that, you know, I say to people, you know, we do things and things happen and we don't really explore them sufficiently. Because for me, okay, so that happened, but life went on. You run in school sports, you play football, you pass your exams, and the next year you go up to Form 2, and you run in school sports, and you play football, and you pass your exams. But life goes on, but we don't go on unscathed.
Right.
We take the traces with us, which I discovered many years later. But secondary school was an interesting experience because it was a place where there were so many priests. My God. Yeah, there were just so many priests, you know, they were in your face, in your space. And of course, there were the lay teachers at St. Mary's who were all very proper, many of them ex-St. Mary's students. And the place was orderly. It reinforced some of the standards that I had grown up with, you know, in primary school. But I also came face to face with some of the realities of the divisions in our society, particularly around race and class. You know, in terms of access and who would get picked for school teams and that kind of thing, and you saw it and you heard it. So a certain, the black fellas in St. Mary's were in cadets.
Right.
You know, the white boys were in Sea Scouts. Just to put it very bluntly, that's
how
and of course, that's how it was. So you did it, you know. I have some very good friends who went to St. Mary's, who we would call the local white boys. And we would be great friends during the day, but at 3:15 when the bell went, they would jump in the car and drive up Pembroke Street, and I walk out the gate on Frederick Street and walk down to go and take my train to go home. You know? So it was that. But, you know, interestingly, and this to treat with the issue of mentor, I encountered a teacher at St. Mary's who I still think of very fondly, and I keep saying that I really need to call him. Same way I call Edgar. And his name was Murchison Jarrett. Murchison was a language teacher, and he had come back to Trinidad. He had studied in Jamaica at UWI, and he came back. And when he came back, I remember him sort of regaling us with stories about where is this place? There's a bamboo thing in Jamaica, Fern Gully. That's what it is, Fern Gully. I remember him talking about Fern Gully. So I mean, years later, when I went to Jamaica and I passed through Fern Gully, I said, "This is what Murchie was talking about." But Murchison Jarrett was a good teacher, but he was very thoughtful and caring, gentle person, and for me, really, in a sense, engendered a kind of love for the subject, but also did some things that really made him a human being to me, and I admired the way he went about his business, the way he taught, and some of the things that he would share.
I'd like to go back a little bit to the separation or the divorce of your parents.
Yes.
Did you have any discussion with any teacher at St. Mary's at the time, or any adult who helped you through what had happened?
No, there was no discussion.
You worked it through
there's no discussion. I don't even know if I worked it through or if I just moved on.
Or life just happened.
Life goes on. You play your football, you run away, you go in the river, you do pass your exams, you know, barely, and and you do what you have to do. So no, I didn't have any. There was nothing like discussion. The notion of counseling and helping people through trauma and things was. That was life. And,
that was
you
life,
just handle your stories and you go on. You know.
Yes. So let's move to what happened post-secondary school, and you know, if you encountered anyone else who performed in a mentorship role, whether at university, and I know you studied abroad and all of that. So we might find some interesting stories there.
Well, there was a useful little transitional period. Because when I left school, I'd finished A-levels, and I was 17 at the time, and I knew my mother was clear that I was going to go away to study. So I went to teach. Actually, my first job was at the Ministry of Agriculture, where I worked for a couple of months, and then succeeded in getting a job as a teacher. And I taught at Tranquility Government Secondary from 66 to 68. The Tranquility used to be intermediate, and they made it secondary, and it used to be intermediate boys and intermediate girls. But what they made it co-ed, so they mixed the boys and the girls and made it secondary. And I went to teach, and I was teaching geography and Spanish,
Right.
which were two of my main subjects at St. Mary's. And teaching forms 3, 4, and 5, so the upper school. So it turns out, in fact, that I was teaching people who were older than I was. Somebody Form 5 students were they 18, 19 years old.
Right.
I don't know how long they stayed in, but some of them were my age, and I meet them now. They're contemporaries. They still call me sir, but you know, we understood then what it was. But in that period, there was an interesting development out in the teaching fraternity, because the Mausika Teachers College
Right.
had been putting out a number of cohorts of teachers. I think this was early days, might have been one of the early groups that came out. And there were a number of people in that group who would have gone into teach at Tranquility maybe the same year or the year before I did. But they would have been like 4 or 5 years older than I was. So, you know, so I could think of people like Rick Yalariata, Arthur Small, Alfred Waif, people who were my contemporaries as teachers,
Right.
but certainly were my senior.
Yes.
And would have gone through some things in life, whether it was in terms of their own careers, their personal lives, but also in terms of the residential experience that they would have had at Mausika Teachers College, with some kinds of insights and conversations that continued. I mean, Alfred Waif and I continued to have a good relationship. Arthur Small, I saw many years later, and in touch with him every now and then. He lives in Canada now, but we call ourselves friends now. But
Okay, right,
but
right,
really,
yes,
they were
yes.
my seniors,
Yes.
and you know, many bits of wisdom that they would have shared. You know. I mean, there was one particular guy, Lance Heath. I don't know if you know him. Lance is now deceased. Lance would have been contemporaries with Chalky and these guys, Roy Augustus and they. And Lance Heath introduced me to a book when I would have been about 18 at teaching at there. And it was the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Okay.
And we spent many hours talking about Malcolm X and what it meant, the whole question of Islam and you know, civil rights and what Malcolm X was doing. Those were some very powerful conversations for me, and in a sense set my mind in a place that helped me to see things differently once I got to North America.
Right.
So that was a
let's transition
that was a
to
particularly
North
powerful
America.
one.
Tell us a little bit about that, and again, you know, did you have any encounters with people who
you
turned
know,
out to be...
interestingly, in North America, when I left here, I would have been 19.
Right.
My brother actually, let me segue a little bit. My brother had gone into the priesthood and spent 3 years in there and came back out. And so he came out in 67. We were together at home, and both of us went away in 68 to Canada.
Okay.
But he's a pretty, I guess, having been in the priesthood, he was in dormitory and in the monastery and whatever else. And I was a little different, let me say. So he went up to Canada and he went into residence, halls of residence. And I told my mother, I don't want to go into any residence where I have to eat at 7 o'clock and then come back for lunch at 12:30. No, I wanted to be on my own. So I had to find a place to live when I got there and started to make my way through Canada, through Toronto. And there was... and this takes me back to the ARIMA connection. When I was teaching at Tranquility, I was walking close to the Tranquility Primary School one day, and I saw Mrs. Thelma Mark, who was Ainsley Mark's mother.
Okay.
All right? Now, Mrs. Mark had been my teacher in ABC in ARIMA Boys Government. All right? Because Mr. Mark, A.A. Mark, he was head teacher at ARIMA Boys Government. Ainsley and his sisters Gloria, Carol, and Shirley, and they used to live in ARIMA and so on. So, I mean, I knew, again, they were big to me. I just used to play a little fresh up. But they were big to me. And I was walking along, and I saw Mrs. Mark, and I said, hey, Mrs. Mark, how you doing? And she said, Tony Boy, I really heard you're teaching up at the school there, so what you doing? I said, well, in a couple of months, September, we are going off to Canada, and so on. She said, where to Canada? I said, Toronto. She said, oh, gosh, come, let me give you Ainsley's number. Ainsley is in Toronto. So she gave me Ainsley's number. And so I landed in Toronto. Yes, my brother is there, but he's in residence.
Right.
But Ainsley is outside and doing his accounting and that kind of thing. And I hooked up with Ainsley, and in many ways, Ainsley was another one of those figures in my life. He was a big brother, respected, competent, you know, and in a sense would tell you, he would talk straight to you. He was a straight talker.
Okay.
He would tell you how things were, but would always be prepared to support. And it was interesting when some years later, and I'm going to jump around a little bit, in 1989, when I was thinking about setting up my own business, he is the first person that I went to ask about that, because he had been at the university lecturing and then left to start his accounting firm, Castillo and Mark and Castillo, and then Mark Castillo Tony. And so he was one, and I wanted to talk with him about what that experience was like, what it was like to leave a job, to start a business, what were some of the challenges. So, I mean, it was that's a hopscotch kind of relationship. Big boy to you in primary school in Arima, but then a connection and guide in Toronto, and then advisor in terms of question of going out on your own, setting up your own business and things like that. So he was a powerful influence there.
Did you have any kind of connection to any lecturer, professor at the university?
No, but I always remember one professor who said one thing to me that had a tremendous impact on how I looked at the world. He was my lecturer in social psychology, and his name was John Arrowwood. And I remember one day I had missed some classes, maybe a week or two, and one day I saw him on campus, and he saw me. So he says, well, I'm not seeing you in class. So, well, you know, Prof, I have some stuff, I have to do some research and preparing some things. He said, I understand. You really shouldn't let your classes get in the way of your education. You should not let your classes get in the way of your education. And I just walk away shaking my head. I say, oh boy. You know, and really, in a sense, you ask yourself, what is education? What is learning? And of course, what would just be the rigors and the routine of going to classes? You know, and that I have never left. That lesson has never left me. No.
So, what about in terms of your work experience? Did you meet any mentors? And again, the focus of the podcast is to talk about mentor-mentee relationship. And you know, some years ago, and we talked, I'd never forget what you told me, which is that your values is supposed to be equal to your rhetoric, which is supposed to be equal to your behavior.
Yes.
So, and I'd never forget that, actually, and I've used it many times. So the whole question of values is an important topic for you. So,
yes, it is.
So I want to talk about whether you had any mentor that would have passed on, or, you know, and specifically that you could tie these things together for how you are now mentoring.
Sure. Well, let me talk in a sense, and you talk about it in terms of work. After the first couple of years at university, of course, being out on my own, you know, a little own man thing, I don't think I got a summer job that year, so I couldn't go into school for my third year, so I started to work. Right. And I went to work at a place called OHIP, Ontario Hospital Insurance, Health Insurance Program. And when I went to work there, I met a fellow called Sam Lewis. Sam is still alive. He's maybe about 10 years older than I am, all right? But Sam used to be a police officer in Trinidad and Tobago. He was a police officer, and he had gone to New York and then went to Canada. So he was this larger-than-life figure with an old police voice, right? And he was working there with us, and we just got close, you know. Why I couldn't say, but he was just this person. Hey, Tony, how you doing? What's happening with your son? And a little while after, my mother came up to Canada, and she visited, and of course I introduced Sam to my mother, and she was ecstatic. She says, I am happy that Sam is here. I'm going to give Sam some instructions in terms of how to keep you on the straight and narrow.
Right.
So Sam became this surrogate, well, I wouldn't say mother,
Yes,
but all the things that my mother wanted done, Sam was the
Yes,
person who would say,
okay.
listen, boy, your mother said so and so. And Sam was very much part of, in a sense, guiding and keeping me on the straight and narrow in a lot of ways, in a way that was, you knew that it was Sam talking, but it was also my mother speaking.
Okay.
All right,
Yes.
I knew
Yes.
that is what the message was, and I mean that I met him in 1970, and we are still very close friends.
Wow.
You know, in fact, he was the father giver in my wedding. He and June are very
Okay.
close, so he was the
Okay.
father giver in the wedding. They in Canada now, and they're going to be coming back down pretty soon. But he was somebody straight, very much involved. I had got into theater when I was there, and we had a theater group, and I invited him to the theater group, so he became part of that. So he was always present. He was always present, and always the person to be there and to affirm certain kinds of things in
and
terms
values.
of what,
Yes,
of what
value
needed to be done.
inculcation. Yeah.
He's still
Yes.
very much like that.
Is there anybody else you want to kind of highlight as a mentor performing that role in your work life? Or before we move on to you as a mentor?
Yeah. So let me talk in the theater, the theater group. There's another very good friend of mine. He's from Barataria. I didn't know him in Trinidad. And he was in Howard University. And then he migrated to Canada. I know his brothers very well, his younger brothers. And he was also part of that theater group. That theater group experience was an extremely useful thing in my development, in my growth and development. But when he came, he had studied psychology as well at Howard. And he was quiet, laid back. His name was Rudvin Thomas. He is very quiet, laid back. But we spent many hours just quietly talking about things, about, well, his experiences in the States, the issue of psychology, blackness, you know, manhood. We talked a lot about those kinds of things. He wrote some of the plays that we did. He wrote poetry. So we were into a lot of stuff, and I was into his head in terms of what we were doing. I guess the most painful part of that experience was just before he died. He had gone quiet. He wasn't talking. He wasn't responding to anybody, and he was in a home. And I went up to Canada, and I asked people. I said I wanted to go and look for him. I wanted to know where he was, and like they didn't want to tell me where he was. And eventually, I found out where the home was. Went there, and I always remember getting up to the floor and saying to the nurse at the station, say, listen, I'm here to see Rudvin Thomas. And she looked up at me as if, well, were you going to see Rudvin Thomas for? So they brought him out, and he sat there for half an hour. No recognition, not a song, not a word. I talked to him. He said nothing. He never replied. He was just there. His eyes were open. He was breathing, and that was it. I remember leaving the floor, going back down, and my wife was waiting in the car for me, because both of us had gone up to Toronto that year. And that was one of my real weepy, sobbing moments, to see someone who had been such a formative part of who I was in terms of theater, in terms of the literary life, in terms of his expression of our presence, our blackness in Canada. And to see him like that was really heartbreaking. That was tough.
Okay. So,
but Edgar's still alive, Murchie's still alive, Sam's still alive.
When you came back to Trinidad now, did you meet anybody else, by the way?
No, when I came back in 1980, how old was I? I was just 31, yeah. And I worked as a guidance officer for about 8 years during that period. There was, I mean, one of the supervisors, my supervisor at the time was a fellow called Dr. Eric Drew, who I admired significantly in terms of his technical awareness and knowledge of the work that we were doing in guidance. But the relationship was never one where we discussed things outside of work. You know, so I wouldn't describe it as a mentoring relationship.
Okay.
It really was a relationship with a senior whose work I respected.
Okay.
So that's how I would describe that.
Well, Anthony, I know you've mentored many people. I want to say probably thousands, but you've chosen Don LaFoucault to talk
Yeah.
about. So let's kind of make the segue into, you know, how did you meet Don? What attracted you to each other? And, you know, how did you kind of pass on, you know, some of what you learned, your values, as I said, which is important, to him?
Yeah.
And how do you mentor as an authentic leader?
You know, I was talking recently with somebody about some of the work that I do, especially in terms of change and transformation.
Yeah.
And I was saying it's beyond the ones and the zeros. We have to go past that mechanical operational thing. And then I found another way to describe it. I say, you know, this is beyond mechanics. This is about organics. And I'm not a mechanical mentor. I'm an organic mentor.
Well, it might be good to tell us what's the difference, right?
You know, it was like I don't know that mentor is, you know, Don and I don't have a relationship. We say, listen, here's what we're going to talk every 2 weeks.
Right,
We're going to meet
of
at
course.
Thursday evening at
Of
5
course,
o'clock.
of
We'll
course.
discuss this and then we'll discuss that. It evolves.
Yes.
It grows. We meet. We talk. We chat. We enjoy. We touch base every now and then. And it's that kind of thing. I think in the early parts of a mentoring relationship, contact is a little more frequent. What I have found as one of my powerful growing experiences as a mentor
Right.
is coming to the place where if you love something, set it free. You know, and I don't even have to say the rest. I'm not
Right,
going to say,
yes.
if you love something, set it free. That really you're in people's lives and they grow,
Yes.
but they're not growing to stay.
Yes.
So, I mean, if people move on, that's how it's supposed to be. Because
That's
if
okay with you.
Yes, yeah. If they're growing and they're staying here, then they're not growing. You're constricting that. And for me, while that's useful for them, I have found it on reflection to be a really useful growth lesson for me in terms of how do you do something for the benefit of the other and be prepared to let it go. There's a kind of pride, you know, I take and I look at some of the people who would have been in my space.
Of course.
And I say, yeah, you know.
So you're comfortable.
Yeah.
At one point in time, I used to mentor him.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you
But
know,
do
and I
people-
mean, even from a work perspective, and we'll come back to the actual mentoring piece of it. When people work in my organization and they go to a certain point and they leave, I say, okay, maybe this flower pot just not big enough for their
Right,
roots.
yes.
And that's okay. But they come back, they connect, and they go out there not as untouched, but they go there as touched and influenced by Watkins and Odyssey and all the other people who were
Right.
there. So we know that they're part of what their life is.
So this
you
is
know.
your normal way of dealing with grooming, developing,
Yes.
coaching, you know, the young ones.
Yeah,
you know,
it very much
in your
is.
space.
Yes, yeah. And
yes.
you know,
Do you tell them that? Do you tell them it's okay?
no. No,
Or
actually,
you
I don't,
just,
you know.
or you just in your interaction with
Yeah.
them, they know they have the freedom to move on and pay
Yeah.
forward.
And sometimes I push them. So Don will tell you that story.
Looking forward to hearing
but you
hearing
know,
from Don.
let me come back to some of the things that in a sense, why that's a particularly powerful learning lesson for me. What I didn't say when I was talking about growing up in America is that I had a sister who was 2 years younger than I was, and my sister died in 1957. Okay, she was 6, I was 8.
Wow.
And she had got ill in August. My parents took her to the doctor. She spent a couple of weeks in the hospital, and the doctor said, listen, your daughter has leukemia. There's nothing we could do for her. She's going to die. I may as well take her home. So between August and December of 1957, remember, my brother is in school in Port of Spain during the week. So during the week is me and my sister.
Right.
And I look at my sister die a little bit every day. She dies on the 16th of December. We were there in the room, leaning over the back of the chair. The priest came in, gave her last rites, and I saw my only sister take her last breath. So she dies. I was heartbroken, but guess what? Life goes on. You still run away, go to the river, you still play cricket, you go on a running sport, you play some football, you pass your exam, and life goes on. My parents separated in 1960 as one. Couple years later, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother in Tobago, she died, and my mother didn't allow me to go to Tobago to the funeral, and I was very upset about that. And so
Why
that
didn't she?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. That was just her story. She just said, "No, you're not coming. You stay here, go to school. I will go over to Tobago." My mother was like that, very matter of fact, blunt, direct and to the point. And you know, in hindsight, when I look back, you ask about the question of people helping you to resolve and to work through these things. Life goes on, but you don't really work through them. And the remnants of those things stay. So there's an issue for me, and there was, as I went through my life, issues of loss and letting go.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
So this is why, for example, I could take out of a mentoring relationship how important it is for me to let go.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
So while I might really be, oh God, the person really going there, hey, people need to go.
Go. Yes.
You know, so I have seen that, and that has been one of the, in a sense, you know, they say every contact leaves a trace. So that is a major trace that was in my life based on early experiences. And it has come into the work that I do in terms of mentoring, where I consciously and say, listen, this person has to go. It's not as though you have to hold this person.
And while you're talking, I'm there thinking, I wonder if it is that there's something in you that says, well, if you don't let go, it could also be taken away. Because
maybe
because the loss you had,
yes,
I mean, you had no control.
Yes.
Somebody walking out of your life is a little bit, you could still say, come back.
Yes. Yeah.
But death is a different kind of
so there are those things.
situation.
And for me, it is like, reflection is so powerful. And for me, that was how I interpret and experience the mentoring relationship. Even, I mean, you work with a client for a long period.
Yeah.
The issue of saying, okay, you know, you have to paddle this canoe now, we have to step out of it. That is always a conscious thing that I do, that I have to do, both for me and for the client. But I think some of the angst, some of the deliberateness about it comes out of maybe some of those unresolved things from very early on. Yeah.
Yes. Well, but I want to ask, though, has there ever been a person for which you had to say, you know, now it's time for you to go. You've been around for too long.
You don't want names, right?
No.
Yes, there have been.
You know, like, you know, how do you wean people off of you?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yes.
Because you have a model for mentorship, which I find
yes,
rather interesting,
yeah.
and it has worked well. I mean, we all know of your incredible work as a mentor. So, how do you kind of wean people off? Do you have a time frame, as a matter of fact, in mind for how long the relationship is supposed to last, and the development process of the mentorship relationship? So you say, well, okay, if they're wrong still, then it means that you have not, you know, done it the way you.
This is what I'm saying. So it's not about organic. It's not about the mechanics.
Yeah.
It's really about. It's almost as though the time will come.
Okay.
You will know. I will know. And if, to me, if I'm mentoring you on a journey towards what your future
greatness,
is, there must be a time when, I mean, we like ships in the night. We pass it in the sea, and sometimes, you know, we pass at right angles, so we just, for a split second, a couple of weeks, we in one other space. But then sometimes the courses are pretty close, and we spend a long time close. But at some point, people need to go on to what their future is. I felt very trapped in the guidance unit.
Okay.
Towards in the last 2 years of guidance, I felt like I wanted it to go somewhere. I was growing and developing, and I felt I wanted to do some more things. And it's just something that I have to do. And I just spoke to them and said, listen, I am out of here. I can't stay here. I couldn't. I was closing in on 40, and I was saying, I can't live another 20 years like this. It's just not possible. Yeah. So, for example, even in terms of human resource management, one of the terms that I just cannot wrap my mind around is employee retention. What is that? With retention, it's not slavery, you know, own people. People are here, they're comfortable, they grow, they challenge, and at some point they will move. Right. When you have to have mechanisms to retain people. Keep them, No. That's just not part of my worldview at all. I don't want to be retained, and I don't want to retain anybody. Yes. So I mean, wanting to not go in residence and live on my own. Wanted to start with a part of those kinds of freedom things that are part of
not like in confinement.
Yeah, but part of my worldview. And therefore, in a mentoring relationship, I feel that is how it should be. Yes. Yeah. And even an employee relationship. Yeah. Be ready to go, you thank them for all that they've done and wish them well, man.
Well, Anthony, it was such a pleasure talking to you, and this is we're coming to the end of part one. Sure. So we'll bring in with Don, who will have stories to tell.
Yes, I'm sure.
And then you will join us again in part two.
Sure.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you at the other end of the break. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming back to Mentoring Monday. Today I have one of my favorite people in the world, Mr. Anthony Watkins. And earlier we talked about his mentorship journey as a mentee. And now we're going to talk about his mentorship journey as a mentor. And with us today we have Mr. Don Lafoucard. So let's talk a little bit about Don, who is also well known in the national arena. So Don Lafoucard is a certified John Maxwell coach, teacher, and speaker who has been delivering inspirational talks and workshops around the Caribbean since 1999. He's also the former manager, social investment, corporate communications, TNT, RBC Royal Bank, and was specifically responsible for coordinating their Young Leaders program, one of the Caribbean's most highly successful youth initiatives. He also held the position of Secretary of the RBC Foundation, Education Foundation, working to implement educational projects around Trinidad and Tobago. Don has also served as a camp counselor, director, and board member of the YMCA and the host of a TV6 youth production entitled Network. In the area of sport, he has served as the assistant coordinator of the Atu Bolden Stadium for the World Under-17 Football Championships in 2001. He has also coordinated for a number of years the then RBTT Intercol football competition and was a director of the Lafoucard Soccer Clinic with his identical twin brother Dion, who is involved nationally with the game of football. In 2009, Don initiated and facilitated with Mr. Watkins 5 youth inspirational workshops entitled Uniquely Worthy, which specifically covered 3 topics: valuing oneself, valuing one's peers, and discovering and delivering one's purpose. These workshops targeted 200 young people in 5 locations across the country. In 2013, Don embarked on a Republic Bank-sponsored motivational tour of secondary schools, the first of which was entitled Soaring in Spite Of. For that specific tour, he was able to visit 90 secondary schools across our twin island republic. Bringing it home, in 2021, Don embarked on his 8th tour, this time through virtually on Zoom, the first virtual secondary schools motivational tour, which was entitled Republic Ready. And it saw him hosting 60 Zooms in under 2 months. He now offers all-day public speaking workshops to organizations and is also frequently called upon to inspire and sometimes interview students at all levels of study. What more can I say about Don? But there's still more to say about Don. Don, he's an author of 3 inspirational books: Facing the Storms of Life in Full Flight, which was published in 2012, which is a workbook compilation of inspirational articles. In Full Flight, published in 2008, which is also the name of his inspirational company, and the In Full Flight Notebook Plus book, published in 2018. In 2020, Don co-hosted 16 Zoom webinars with Trinidad and Tobago's 3-time Olympic sailor Andrew Lewis, who he mentors. Don, what more can I say? Welcome, a warm welcome, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion with Anthony about your mentor-mentee relationship. So, Don, thank you and welcome to Mentoring Monday. Tell us a little bit about your first interaction with Anthony.
Well, you know, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. And this gentleman here, I was in the bank, I was at Republic Bank, and they're having a staff forum, the Crown Plaza at the time. Yeah. And so this guy is talking, so I know I have a little talking inside of me. So, you know, for example, if you like decor, when you go in a room, you're watching the decor. So me liking speaking, they're bringing a speaker, right? I'm thinking, okay, here's this red guy, who's this guy? And then I remember him doing something. He was talking about your supervisors. And he said, some of you having some trouble coping. And he said, I want you to take a tennis ball. And I want you to imagine the face of the supervisor on that tennis ball. And I want you to throw that ball up and hold your racket. And listen to me. When he said that, even though he continued speaking, I kept watching the tennis ball and faces changing. And I said, oh gosh, no, I want to serve. That one was not a good serve. I want to serve again. I want to try again. And let me tell you, he had me from the minute go. I mean, he just had me. And somehow, very, very quickly, I saw myself in his shoes. Okay. And I didn't know, I mean, I knew, okay, this guy came, Anthony Watkins. Didn't know what the L is for, right? Anthony Watkins, right? The bank is
Leonard.
You know what I mean? Leonard, old boy. And I say, okay, but I have to get some more of this. Mm-hmm. And inside of me, I'm in there in the bank and thinking, I can't stay here forever. I mean, I got in, I'm so glad they let me in. They hired me in the bank. But I know this couldn't be forever. And I sat down there for years knowing, I have to go. And then the opportunity opened one time and I said, I'm gonna go. And when I left, immediately I went in search of L. Anthony Watkins.
Wow.
I had to find this guy. What was Watkins and Associates or something at that time? I said, Watkins and Associates, but I don't want to associate with me, right? But I'm going to ask because that's what I want to do. And that man, it was a couple of years after the first interaction, but I never forgot him. I couldn't forget that tennis ball. I just, you know, it was just like he made me look up and I was admiring him. But what was happening, there's when you have a mentor-mentee relationship, there's a point when you admire and there's a point when you respect.
Right.
And for me, that admiration turned into respect. Still a lot of love for, but there was a respect for this gentleman. And then I started to hone in and say, this is somebody, I'm respecting him, but there's a reason, there's a natural love, and he has my best interest at heart.
So how many years after the bank experience did you decide to hook up with L. Anthony Watkins?
That could have been about 10 years, you know.
Really?
Yeah, it was a long time. It was a long time. Long time.
So when you went up to L. Anthony Watkins, what did he say? Did he remember you?
Well, the thing is,
Did you take him back to the ball and trying to score the A's?
Well, I kind of had to a little bit, but what I found is that it was open doors, and he said no, like somehow he just felt, hey, there's a young man who really wants to come out here and to be something and to do something. And he just said, come on board. Now, my job then, I mean, I was an associate. I'm an associate.
Yes.
But mind you, it was to go with Mr. Watkins where he was going to speak. And if I had to hand out paper in the room while he's speaking and do something. But guess what? I was so happy because I was treated to hearing him. And as he was speaking... And
you know he could speak.
Yeah, well, hello.
Yeah.
Right? So as he was speaking, I am learning, so I don't mind handing out paper. I don't mind handing out the paper. That's what I'm doing. I'm there handing out a little bookshop.
After a fancy bank
that's
job.
okay. That's okay.
It was okay.
It was okay. No, it's okay. It's quite all right. It's quite all right. It's quite all right.
Anthony, you see how you impact people?
No.
He moved from a fancy banker in charge of all kinds of things.
Leaders.
Leaders and all kinds of things to handing out paper for L. Anthony Watkins.
No.
Yeah.
He was helping me find purpose because I was now finding a value for why I'm living. I'm now finding my reason for being. I mean, you're serving somebody's dream, or you coming up with your dream. And even as I say the word dream, I keep hearing him say over and over, if the dream is big enough, the facts don't matter. And I heard him say that earlier, and that impacted me. Because, again, if the dream is big enough, the facts don't matter. And even now as I do workshops, and so I always remember something he said. One of his workshops, I think a glass fell down, but he continued. The glass broke, and everybody in the room heard the glass broke and whatever. And I'm kind of wondering, how is Mr. Watkins going to handle this, you know? And I remember going to him afterwards. I said, Mr. Watkins, you didn't see the glass? You didn't hear the glass and everything? And of course he did. And then he said to me, and I'll never forget it, and I use it as a guide now. He says, anything that happens in a room is data. I said, whoa. He said, because if the glass fell, everybody in the audience notices the glass. Then that's your pitch point. That's the point from which you're going to speak. So hello, you now turn your talk, your theme, using the glass. And that has impacted me immensely.
Wow. What a profound story.
Don has a way with words.
For sure. So tell us a little bit more about, your expectations were met. Yes, you were happy, but you then, you were getting a lot out of it, and you have then gone on to do a lot of mentoring yourself, right?
Yeah.
Were you always confident that you were going to get what you thought you needed in fulfilling your purpose?
There's a moment in the interaction, because I'm now there, so I'm an associate consultant.
Right.
And one day he calls me in the office, and he says, Don, how is business? I didn't understand the question. I said, well, business is good. Mr. Watkins, I'm top of the world. I mean, I'm pushing paper, but I'm on top of the world. I mean, to sit down in the planning meeting, so and to talk about how it is you analyze with a company and you see what they need and how it is you're going to make this intervention. No two interventions are the same because there are no two companies, no two individuals. What is needed here is different. There's a softer approach here. Here you have to deal with the supervisors first. Maybe you have to deal with the management first. So looking at all of that. And then he said, I didn't ask you that. And I said, oh. He said, I asked you, how is business? And he said to me, how is your business? And I knew I the book, before I left the bank, right before I wrote my first book in full flight. And he looked at me, and this is something I love about him. When he has to correct, he corrects you and he directs in a loving way. He said to me, Don, I don't know anybody who doesn't need to be in full flight. And it went off in my head. And then he gave me a little example, in case I wasn't sure. He said, Don, doctors need to be in full flight, nurses, teachers, students. And then he said to me, Don, I spent a lot of years building this. I don't want to stunt your growth. Don, who doesn't need to be in full flight? Now listen to me. If anybody wants to see how to fire somebody, let me tell you what. Because it's only years after, you know what I mean? It's only years after. I said, but Don, it's fire against fire. It's fire against
So you were not being inspired, you were being fired.
Yes. I said, but did he fire me? But it put in me, he made me believe that I could do it.
Yes.
Many years after, got a call from his office, Don, there's a particular talk. And I need for you, Astra the course, right? I need for you to go and give this talk. And Astra has to let go of workers. So staff are going to be, now they're getting fired.
Yeah, now they're getting in full flight.
Right, they're getting fired. Hello.
Yeah, the in full flight story.
You are going to represent Mr. Watkins. Now, I say, I can't fit in that shoes. That's a different, because, to go and encourage staff, a team builder, and so, a dear man. But now you're giving me, you're sending me out of my comfort zone now. I'm now going straight into fear, because here I'm in a function, I'm representing what, Odyssey Consulting, and I now have to, after the people are fired, they say, we have an expert here today, right? Thank God they didn't know bio. We have an expert here today who are experts in these matters. Now, mind you, they have police outside because they don't know how the people are going to react. Eh? No, very serious. It was that while they are there at the venue, the locks are being changed at the office. No one can even go back into thing. And I remember I'm thinking, Mr. Watkins, this one is a setup. No, this is not no motivational, whatever, right? Because no. But you know, in the back of my mind, if obviously he would have been aware of it, that I was being sent. If Mr. Watkins is sending me, Mr. Watkins sees something in me, and Mr. Watkins has given me an opportunity to grow. This is out of my comfort zone, and I was able to be calm in the midst of it, because that's something I've learned from him. You never know what's going on. And he was calm, and I said, Don, you're going to have to give some sort of speech. And it was very, very simple. The normal thing. When a door closes, there's something else that's going to open. Y'all, I can't tell you how I feel, right? And I can't imagine what would he say. What would Mr. Watkins say? And I said, y'all, it must hurt. And then people say, yes, it hurt. Because we have to go home. And then I took them through a painful experience I had. And by the time I was finished articulating the very painful situation I've been through, they were more concerned about me. As a matter of fact, you know, the people who organized it were surprised that this thing didn't turn out to be a cursing and a fighting and a whatever. Again, that's the effect. You see, we could have a ripple effect. Something about Mr. Watkins, and he'll probably now hear me say this publicly. Now, I get big enough as call him Tony, yeah? But you're right.
Right. But notice the Mr. Watkins.
Yeah, Mr. Watkins, you know what I mean, right? But what is interesting is that the key to a strong mentor is when you're mentoring somebody, and you don't have to say, I am your mentor.
Of course.
He never told me that I was, but I feel mentored by him. And very recently, I had the chance to interview him for a program with Andrew Lewis, interviewed him. And he was making some comments on the program at the time, not knowing what my personal situation. As a matter of fact, he still doesn't know. But he was giving me advice, and he was helping me heal, helping me deal with it from his comments. And I'm admiring now, and I'm saying, but look at this. This man is giving...
Unbeknownst to
him. Still unbeknownst to him.
Right.
But he's giving me advice for life. And that to me is significant, because when he talks, it's not about business and strategy, and it's about life. Business is a part of life, and there's strategies and so. But that to me is a and the fact that I've had the opportunity to go on different stages with him. You know, to me, an honor to go and speak on a stage, and I'm one of the speakers. I'm there. It's there on the program. It's in black and white. I'm there. Look me right here. You know what I mean? And then closing off is Mr. Watkins, and I have to pay honor to him. And, you know, give honor where honor is due. And I have to say, y'all, it's a joy for me to even to speak on the same platform. Worse yet, I get to travel with him and speak. You know, travel, and I've been in the islands with him and whatever, and to get to do something, and I just consider it an honor, and it helps me now say, Don, you could do this for somebody else too. This is not about you, and it's certainly not about him. He makes it for other people. The same way he lets people go, that's something I admire. Because I know the way he, not like how I got fired, really.
But you're still toting.
Yeah.
Still toting.
Yeah.
But this is a good forum to unpack it.
I know. Right? But the same way, I've seen him do that, and he lets people, you go on to be all that you could be. Somebody could be in full flight. You go on there and you be in full flight. You carry your flag.
But I want to bring in Anthony here on these two events. You know, the in full flight discussion, and then later on, you seeing Don as the person to, you know, have the hard conversation with a set of employees who are on the verge of being severed. So talk about it from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the in full flight is part of what I would have referred to a little earlier, the whole notion of freedom and not being constrained, that this is really what we are called to be and what we're called to do. So it's really just, I guess, part of my DNA, part of my ethos, my spirit about how I live, and that kind of thing, I encourage it. When sometimes, you know, people get comfortable in a space, but then there will be some discomfort later on, and the leaving and the moving on then might have a little acrimony in it, because maybe they should have left a little earlier. So my conversation with him about how is business is really, hey, but you tell me about this business, and you have talent, and you could do something, so how is business? Not my business, how is your business?
Okay, so you thought that was the time for him
it was, I think it was a time for him to refocus on the fact that he had some ideas, that he had a dream, but you know, you have a dream, but you get so comfortable here, kind of put the dream because things nice here. So you kind of bring it out, dust it off, and say, hey, what was this thing that you were thinking about?
This book.
You know?
Remember that book?
Yes. So you know, and that was part of really teasing him and prompting him to on that journey to growth. And yeah, Don was useful. Don was part of the team. It was making a lot of sense. But nothing stays the way it is, you know, and is really part of that.
But what I'm kind of curious about is, all right, so, you know, you have a lot of diplomacy and tact. So Don didn't realize.
I wasn't firing Don, you know.
No, Don did not realize that he was fired. But that was not that you were not firing Don. But you know, I want to know in terms of your messaging to your mentees.
Yes.
You know, do you have a lot of situations where you think you are talking to them at a level that they may not necessarily understand? Because Don clearly was, this in full flight, what are you talking about? That's a book I wrote. Well, I'm happy, you know, leave me alone. So is it that your messaging is part of the process, the journey, that they have to understand when they have to move on?
Well, let's
in a nice kind of way?
Well, let's put it this way. Answers end conversations. Questions begin conversations.
Right.
I'm a questioner.
Okay. And you wanted him to continue thinking about
Absolutely.
The questions
so when
after the conversation.
So when I ask the question, so you happy with where you are? Really happy? Yeah. Okay, so somebody may answer and say yeah.
Yeah.
But they leave with the question in their head. And it is the revisiting of the question and reworking out that helps them to discover what they need to be. How is the business? How is your business? Yeah, boy, what about my business, boy? I really had this idea, you know, I put it down here. Maybe I should. So for me, as a mentor, I help to confront people with their possibility.
Okay, nice.
All right, so I will. So, well, what about this thing? Why are you really here?
Yes, why are you really here?
Really here? I mean, that is it. You know, maybe something you could think about.
Yeah. So I think he was able to.
You don't find so?
Yeah, but I think if I'm to hear Don was a little clueless. But then when Don went home, he then said, when he later he said, wait now, it's fire, I'm on fire, you know.
No, but you see, and let's talk about questions. In a mentoring relationship, and even in the work that I would do, questions are not necessarily for answer, you know. Questions are for reflection.
Right.
So I will ask somebody a questions, and they, I said, no, I don't want you to answer.
Yes.
Just think about it. And that's where the power is.
So Don had the reflection. But let's just move fast forward a little time after. You call now Don saying, Don, go and fire some people for me, please. Yeah. So what were you thinking at the time in terms of why he was the person for the job? Because of course there's a cadre of people I'm sure you could have called on. Yeah. What were you thinking about?
Well, I am a deep end leader.
No, tell me about that. I only know about authentic leadership.
Not a depend. I am a deep end leader. I will push you off the edge of the pool.
Okay, comfortably.
Yeah, go and swim. Yeah.
So you're a risk taker as well?
Yes.
Because there's a risk in that.
Of course. I took risks with my life and my career. My thing was, 1989, we had a new government in 1986. The IMF was here. Public servants had lost 10% of their salary. We had VAT. And VAT was it? and the economy was in a nosedive. And I tell people I'm going to leave the government's job and go and set up my business. And they say, you have to be crazy. Nobody starts a business in the depths of a recession.
In recession.
And I say, yeah, I do. It just felt right for me. If I had looked at the numbers and done the analytics,
Right.
I probably would not have. But the organic said, hey, now is the time. This is the time to birth this thing. And in a sense, I would jump off there. I would challenge people who, and because I am like that, because that is how I am, that is how I lead.
But just want to take you back to part one when you were talking about going into your business and
Yes.
having to go visit Ainsley Mark.
Yes.
Who would be a numbers man? Who would be crunching the
Yes,
numbers?
yeah.
Who would be doing all the financials concerning whether it's feasible to do it? What was he saying? Was he saying something different to what you were thinking? And how did that work out
No,
in terms of your mentor
I think he
relationship?
understood what it felt to be in an institution that was cramping your style,
Stifling you.
and also what it meant to have a dream. Because for Ainsley, it was, listen, we as Trinidadians and Tobagonians, we could set up an accounting firm that could compete with any of the
Okay.
big 4, 5, 6, or whoever else.
8, yeah.
You know, and there was this desire to do that. That was a big part of me. And when I left, I said, I'm going to set up this consulting firm. And who was out there? I mean, when I did that, I was 40, but you had people, Diana Mahabir, Clyde James, Steve Sargent, and of course the other big consulting firms. Who was I? I was somewhere. I went to Toronto, spent some years, come back, went to work for 8 years up in Grandy, and I come in tongue and say I want to be a consultant. Who the hell am I?
Yeah.
But I felt I had something to give to the world. I had a dream, I had a desire, I had a passion for it. And I think if you have that, if the dream is big enough, the facts don't count.
Okay,
It doesn't
right.
really matter who is there. The economy didn't matter, the depression didn't matter, the IMF didn't matter. I have something that I want to bring to the world. So for me, because I place myself in that kind of deep end situation, I am quite prepared to place people in that. Because I will look at you and I know you're good and I understand that you're afraid, but fear is not a paralyzer. Fear is not going to kill you. You know.
So let's ask John. So you were thrown into the deep end and you knew Mr. Watkins was capable of doing that at the time. So how did you feel?
Well, I want to recount an instance. We had gone to, I believe, St. Lucia. And let me just tell you what was interesting. So when somebody is mentoring you, right? So I'm looking at everything around him. And I remember going there with another consultant. Sadly, she passed on, you know. And we were waiting in the airport. And the flight is whatever hour. So I'm asking her, I say, but when is Mr. Watkins coming? Because I think all of us on the same flight. I don't think he has a private jet as yet. Right? She said, don't worry, he's going to come in 10 minutes. I said, but no, but if you're looking at the time, there's a time that you have to check in, and there's a time you have to board, and the plane go on. I don't know that you're going to wait for Mr. Watkins. He didn't get the doctorate as yet. You know what I mean? No national award.
No national award.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
they don't wait for people, you know what I mean? And she said, watch and see something. 10, 15 minutes to go, he's going to come walking in cool as ever. And so said you could time it because the plane leaves at, right, 5:50, and there's Mr. Watkins at 5:30 coming in. And cool as ever. And like almost like he was waiting on us. Are you all guys ready? It's time to board. And I'm thinking, but this man is... So we do what we do, and mind you, he's like a saltfish in the islands, right? So that was another thing too for me, you know, how people respected him.
Yes.
You know, so for example, somebody might tell you, Trini and Barbadians, you know, have a little, they flying fish like our water, and, and we don't like that. Right? And, but wherever he went, he was a saltfish. And I say, but there's some way he's communicating, and it's an authentic communication, and people are respecting that all around. So that's something I want to aspire to. And I remember he called out the workshop and said, he told the team, myself, and this is what we're going to do. But young and your energy for so, listen to me. And what I admired about him, after they had finished, the staff had walked, they had a little distance to walk, right? I went and said, and I just whispered, Mr. Watkins, they have some balloons or something in their hand, and I don't think this should be the end And I think they should throw the balloons. You'll get a lovely, we'll tell the photographer, look out for the staff throwing the balloons in the end.
Yeah.
I think it will make a nice magazine cover and it will culminate everything. I just find it didn't culminate. Just they'll walk and finish. Nah, the staff have to stuff to throw. Let's throw it up in the air. Interestingly, no, my heart was beating, but I went to him and I said it. And he said, you feel so? Go ahead. Now, I'm running to go and do it, because the people walking and I want to tell somebody in front here, and when the first person throw, you all is a ripple effect. The thing going to look good, photographer, you decide what angle you're going to get it. Look, what a beautiful shot. Whoa. And I'm thinking in my mind, is he annoyed? Is he annoyed with me, boy? But because we had a plan, but this is the head of the company. He has a plan. I'm there on the trip and thank God for the ticket and everything, you know what I mean? I get a hotel room, I'm in business, you know what I mean?
Life is nice.
Hello. But he was helping me, Donnie. You had to take some risk. I mean, this is personality. You had to, Don, go ahead and be who you have to be. I am not stopping you. If you make an error as well too, well, we're going to talk, you're going to learn from it.
Right,
and that to me says a lot, because I'm learning. You have to let people be. You can't force people to be anything that they're not. And you're going to let people in every sphere of your life, let people be who they are meant to be and let them blossom. And I guess, you see, it kind of trickled off from hearing his story. It kind of trickled down a little bit to me. Why are you stifling? What's retention?
Yes.
Right? Let people go and let them be everything that they could be. And to me, that's the joy.
As Don is talking there, the question, for example, people who I would work with and people who I mentor, there has to be an issue around trust.
Yes.
And you have to trust people's character. You have to trust their commitment. You have to trust their intent. I trust Don. I trusted him then. I trust him now in terms of his intent. There was no malintent. He ain't come to thief anything from Watkins and Associates. He come to grow. He come with a desire. And I respect that intent. I trust it. And for me, I just need to let whatever I have flow towards that and let that go where it has to go. So, are there some times that people will exploit that? Of course there will be. But
are there times when you have been disappointed? Of course. Yeah. And how do you deal with that? I mean, in the sense that, did you have a backup plan if Don had gone to this company and the powers that be called and said this was a total disaster, there's a mutiny outside the door?
I would have been real surprised if that had happened.
Okay, but did you have a backup plan?
No.
No, I think you're confident as well. In being able to be a judge of, And I've had experiences with you. You know your onions. You know your people. You know who to send. Well, let's segue now into the last part of the interview, which is really tips and takeaway for mentorship. And I mean, we all have covered it in the discussion, but I want specific, concrete tips and takeaways that we could share being a mentee and being a mentor. And I quite like what you just said, which is a good start. You must have trust.
Yes.
But what other ingredients, so to speak, as a mentor, do you think you should have for a successful, or what we know in the literature as high quality mentor relationships?
I would root that in my belief in and love for God. Because when I look at where I am now, the amount of times that fella eased me up, the amount of times that fella saved me, pulled me out of some spots, I know that there's something that I am called to do and to be. When I think about the way that I have been blessed, I was blessed with two parents. Both of them were teachers. Both of them work in community. My father was scouts, studied national youth camps. When he died at 97, people, big men, older than me, were crying because they say their father died. They're telling me my father is not my father, that is their father.
Wow.
You understand?
Yes.
when that kind of thing happens and you have people like that in your space, when you encounter somebody, the whoever, you know, the Sam Lewises, the Ruth Winter, the Alfred Waves, the Edgar Lynches, the Winston Williams, when you encounter people like that in your life, you know that they have been a blessing to you. God has blessed me with a number of people like that, a number of contacts, a number of exposures. God has blessed me with some talent and some skills, a kind of a character that I am and that I've become. And if I have been blessed, my responsibility is to share that blessing. We're not blessed for ourselves.
Right, yes.
We blessed so that we can be a blessing to other people.
Yes.
In much the same way that I see how people were in my life, I said, I have a very good friend, a good partner of mine, one of my best friends in Canada. He was in Vancouver the other day. And when he heard that I had got the doctorate, he called me. He said, you know what I want you to do? I want you to think about. He said, why you don't start a scholarship? One in the name of your father and one in the name of your mother. He said, not in your name, you know. The people now give me the doctorate. He said, start a boy in a Rima Boys Government School and a girl where your mother last taught in Samoa Girls Government School. Some student decide on the criteria and you all do that every year. One student, for whatever purpose, they get something that will move them forward. Now, he could say that because he saw them and their impact on me.
Yes.
I have to ask myself, is their impact on me just for me? No. And right away now it is, so how do I become a blessing to other people and let that go on? So for me, the mentoring thing comes out of a place of humility, recognition of the role of God in your life, submission to God's will, and loving God and loving man. To me, that's the root for me of who I am and what, and just who I am. Mentoring is part of how that is manifested.
Yes. Great. So Don, as a mentee, what do you think are some of the ingredients that are important to you for a high quality mentor-mentee relationship? And I know I don't want to lose sight of your sterling resume. So I want you, being a mentee to a great man, an icon of the country, and now being a mentor, to talk about what are some of those ingredients.
Well, I want to just touch, and as you probably expect me to say this, but I want to touch on something that he mentioned, right? So that's how it comes down. There's like an unconditional love. And to me, looking at Mr. Watkins operate, there's been an unconditional love towards others. Now, it's important sometimes to have more than one mentor. And certainly, I have other mentors as well in my life. And I remember one of them, I'll call his name Michael Callender, former general manager at the bank.
Right.
And he said to me, because I was aggrieved, I find I didn't get the recognition. I had gotten some young leaders program at the bank. I had brought in, I alone operating across Trinidad and Tobago, I brought in more projects than they had for a couple of years, and they had 2 coordinators, 1 coordinator. I brought in more projects than the 2 coordinators before had, and I felt I needed some recognition. And I remember him saying to me, Don, it's not about I. So in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, I know where this is going. It's not about I, it's about we.
Yes.
But then he stopped me there. He says, no, it's not about we, it's about them. And I said, whoa, that's a different concept. It's about them, and they're the ones who will promote me. And it's about passing it on. If you have a flower and you want that flower to bloom, might start with whatever plant, if you keep your hand over it, it will never blossom. Because you will stunt the growth. And just as Mr. Watkins is to me, and I can use his business, I can go there any day, right? Any day, sit down, use the phone, do whatever. And even though now I'm on my own part, I'm doing different things, and so I can still call him for advice. So he's being accessible is a key part.
Accessibility, yes.
Is a key part, and that I have with him. No, I know, don't call him during news. You learn after a while. No, it's a rule. You don't call him when the news is on.
Don't WhatsApp him either.
No, Mr.
During
Watkins,
yeah.
you don't call Mr. Watkins
Don't
during
WhatsApp him either.
No. Don't. But you see, it teaches you as well too.
Yes.
And if you hearing him, he's a great storyteller. And I see myself, because I'm still learning. I still want to learn, even though people say they learn from me. But I still want to learn
from him. Yes,
yeah, as much as I can. Whether formally and informally, he's still teaching.
Yes.
So I am just want to continue to look at his shoes and say, what is he doing? What is he doing different? And then guess what? He's not just staying into business. He's getting into so many different areas, the communities and that's what I want to be. I have a ways to go. Nobody has arrived. I have a ways to go. And he's put some big shoes there for you to fill and whatever. And I mean the legacy. I asked him that question at the end of our interview the other day. And he said, don't, when you say legacy, make me feel like I want to go. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's like when I call him and I say, boy, here you get doctorate. Here I said, doctor. He said, no, I don't have COVID. Forget the doctor, don't I? You don't forget it, you know what I mean?
Just the same with me, don't worry.
Just the same, yeah. But that's, and that.
Because he's selfie-facing, I think.
Yeah. But that to me is what I aspire to be. So having people, society doesn't always give us people that we could look up to.
Yeah.
Right? And the fact that I can look up to him, it means that I may have somebody who's going to look up to me. And I want to give them something to look up to. So the message that he is sending, he is the message. And the message that I am receiving, I need to let that message go to somebody else. So I mean, it's a ripple effect.
Do you continue to be in awe even though you are now doing the same things?
Let me tell you, I always want to hear him speak because he's teaching you, and a true mentor doesn't have to say, I'm teaching you.
Right.
He is living his life,
of course.
And you can take pattern from his life.
Yes.
And there's a lot. I mean, there's a whole fabric story we hear, right?
Yes,
but you could actually take pattern from his life, and I'm realizing now, since we're making it a bit formal, that I'm being patterned by him, and others are being patterned now by me.
Great. Well, gentlemen, what can I say? I mean, this was incredible. You all have shared a lot. I've learned a lot, and I continue to be inspired and be in awe of Anthony Watkins.
Don't forget the L.
Don't forget the L. Yes. Because, as I said in the interview, V, yes?
Equals R equals B.
Equals R equals B. I tell you, the first time he told me that, I was like, it was like getting your classes and where your education is like, what is he telling me? Yeah. Wow. So I've lived by that, because those are profound lessons that we learn, that we get from people, that we take to our graves, So I want to say thank you very much, gentlemen. It has certainly been an honor for me to have this interview with both of you all. I continue to wish you all the best. Continue to look on the TV and say, hey, I know that fella. Yeah. So thanks again, and all the best. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on Mentoring Monday. Join us again next week when we'll have some more interesting guests, a mentor and a mentee, to talk with us on mentoring relationships.